The dust swirled around Zara Ellis as she stumbled down the dirt road, her few possessions bundled in a worn blanket clutched against her chest. Tears streaming silently down her face as the first rays of sunlight crept over the horizon. Behind her, the imposing Ellis family homestead grew smaller with each step, the echo of her father's final condemnation still ringing in her ears. "You are no longer a daughter of mine." Montana Territory, 1876. The unforgiving landscape of rolling plains and distant mountains seemed to mirror the harshness of her situation. At 20 years old, Zara had never imagined she would find herself cast out from the only home she'd ever known, all because she had refused to marry Jeremiah Blackstone, the wealthy cattle baron her father had selected for her. A man 30 years her senior with cruel eyes and hands that wandered too freely during their brief meetings. "I would rather die than be that man's wife," she had declared last night, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. Her father's face had turned a dangerous shade of crimson. "Then you will die without the Ellis name. You have until dawn to gather your things and leave. You are dead to us." Her mother had wept silently in the corner, unable or unwilling to defend her only daughter against her husband's wrath. Her brothers had looked away, ashamed but equally powerless against their father's iron will. Now, as the Montana sun began to warm her shoulders, Zara heard the sound of hoofbeats approaching from behind. Her heart raced with fear had her father sent someone to bring her back. Or worse, was it Jeremiah himself, coming to claim what he believed was rightfully his? She quickened her pace, though she knew there was nowhere to hide on the open road to Kelton. The hoofbeats grew louder until they were nearly upon her, and then slowed to match her pace. Zara kept her eyes fixed ahead, refusing to acknowledge the rider. "Miss Ellis." The voice was deep but gentle, not one she recognized immediately. Reluctantly, she turned her head to find Wade Irving watching her from atop his chestnut stallion. His dark hair curled beneath his worn cowboy hat, and his face, tanned and weathered from years under the Montana sun, regarded her with concern. She knew him only in passing. He worked as a ranch hand on the neighboring Thompson property, occasionally delivering messages or supplies to her father. "It's just Zara now," she replied, her voice hoarse from crying. "The Ellis name is no longer mine to claim." Wade's expression softened with understanding. "I heard there was trouble at your place last night. Word travels fast, even across open country." Of course it did. Kelton might be small, but gossip moved faster than wildfire in summer. "Are you heading to town?" he asked, guiding his horse to walk beside her. "I don't know where I'm going," she admitted, the weight of her situation suddenly crushing down on her. "I have nowhere to go." Wade was quiet for a moment, considering. Then he dismounted in one fluid motion, leading his horse by the reins as he fell into step beside her. "What are you doing?" she asked, confused by his actions. "It's a long walk to town," he said simply, "and you shouldn't have to make it alone." "You don't need to concern yourself with my troubles." "Perhaps not," he conceded, "but I find myself concerned nonetheless." They walked in silence for a time, the rhythmic clopping of the horses' hooves providing a steady backdrop to her tumultuous thoughts. "Your father is a proud man," Wade finally said, "and proud men make foolish decisions." "He's made his choice, and so have I," Zara replied, squaring her shoulders despite the weariness pulling at her body. Wade nodded, respecting her resolve. "Do you have any friends in town?" "Someone who might take you in," Zara shook her head. Her father had kept the family isolated, believing that mixing too freely with the townsfolk would somehow taint them. The few social gatherings she'd been permitted to attend had been carefully selected, with potential suitors, wealthy ones, being the primary motivation. "I have some savings," she said, patting the small pouch hidden in the folds of her skirt. "Enough for a few nights at the boarding house, perhaps. After that?" Her voice trailed off, uncertainty clouding her future. "You could ride with me," Wade offered, gesturing to his horse. "It would be faster." Zara hesitated. Accepting help from a man she barely knew went against everything she'd been taught. But then again, everything she'd been taught had led her to this moment alone and cast out. "Why are you helping me, Mr. Irving?" Wade's gaze met hers, steady and clear. "Because it's the right thing to do, and because no one deserves to be abandoned for following their heart." Something in his words resonated deep within her. How did he know she had followed her heart? That refusing Jeremiah wasn't merely rebellion but a desperate bid to preserve her chance at finding real love someday. After a moment's consideration, she nodded. Wade helped her mount the horse before swinging up behind her, his presence solid and reassuring at her back. "To Kelton, then," he said, and with a gentle click of his tongue, the horse started forward at a trot. Zara couldn't help but look back one last time at the road that led to her family's ranch, now just a speck on the horizon. As they rode toward the unknown future that awaited her in town, she felt a curious mixture of terror and freedom. The warmth of Wade's body behind her and the steady rhythm of the horse beneath them grounded her in the present moment, preventing her mind from spiraling into panic. "Have you lived in Kelton long?" she asked, desperate to fill the silence with something other than her own troubled thoughts. "Born and raised," Wade replied. "My pa ran the livery stable until his passing 5 years ago. Now my older brother has taken it over." "I'm sorry about your father," Zara said softly. "Thank you, he was a good man." There was a pause before Wade continued. "What about you?" "Any plans for what you'll do once we reach town?" The question struck Zara like a physical blow. What would she do? Her education had prepared her to be a rancher's wife, not to make her own way in the world. She could read and write well enough, knew her figures, and could manage a household, but were any of those skills marketable? "I suppose I'll need to find work," she said, the reality of her situation sinking in. "Though I'm not sure who would hire me, Mrs. Holloway at the general store might need help," Wade suggested. "Or perhaps the schoolhouse. They're always looking for someone to assist with the younger children." "My father would be mortified to see his daughter working as a shop girl or a teacher's assistant," Zara said, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. "With all due respect, Miss Zara, your father forfeited his right to opinions about your future when he cast you out at dawn." His bluntness was refreshing. Everyone in her life had always been so careful around her father, tiptoeing to avoid his displeasure. "You're right," she admitted, "and I find I care less about his opinions with every mile between us." The sun climbed higher in the sky as they made their way toward Kelton. The land opened up before them, vast and beautiful in its wildness. Zara had rarely been permitted to travel this far from the ranch unaccompanied, and she drank in the sights with newfound appreciation, the way the tall grass swayed in the breeze, the distant mountains blue against the horizon, the occasional antelope bounding across the plain. "It's beautiful," she murmured, almost to herself. "That it is," Wade agreed. "Montana gets into your blood. I tried leaving once, headed to California after my pa died, made it as far as Oregon before I turned around and came home." "What brought you back?" "The sky," he said simply. "Nothing compares to a Montana sky and the freedom. Out here a man can breathe." Zara understood. Despite everything, she couldn't imagine leaving this land behind. It was part of her just as much as the family that had rejected her. As they crested a gentle rise, the town of Kelton came into view, a collection of wooden buildings strung along a main street, with smaller structures scattered beyond. It wasn't much compared to the bigger cities back east, but to Zara at that moment, it represented possibility. "Where would you like me to take you?" Wade asked as they approached the town limits. "The boarding house, I suppose," Zara replied. "Mrs. Finch's place if she has a room available." Wade nodded and guided his horse toward a 2-story building on the edge of town. The white clapboard structure looked well maintained, with curtains in the windows and a small garden out front. A sign hung from the porch: "Finch Boarding House, clean rooms, fair prices." As they dismounted, Zara felt a momentary panic. This was really happening. She was about to begin a new life alone, with only her meager savings and the few possessions she'd managed to grab before leaving. Wade must have sensed her fear, for he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You'll be all right, Miss Zara. The folks in Kelton are good people." "Thank you for bringing me here," she said, forcing a smile. "I don't know how I would have managed the walk. It was no trouble." He hesitated, then added, "If you're amenable, I'd like to check on you tomorrow, make sure you're settling in." The offer surprised her. "That's very kind, but I wouldn't want to impose further on your time." "It's no imposition," he assured her. "I come into town most days anyway to visit my brother at the livery." Something in his eyes, a warmth, a sincerity, made Zara nod her agreement. "Then I would appreciate that, Mr. Irving." "Wade," he corrected gently. "If we're to be friends, you might as well use my given name." "Wade," she repeated, liking the way it felt on her tongue. "And you must call me Zara." With that understanding between them, Wade helped her carry her bundle to the door of the boarding house. Mrs. Finch, a plump widow with kind eyes, welcomed Zara without prying questions, though Zara could see the curiosity burning behind her polite smile. "Room at the back, second floor, Mrs." Finch said, handing over a key. "Breakfast at 7, dinner at 6, no gentlemen callers in the rooms, and quiet hours after 9. "Thank you," Zara said, relieved that a room was available. She counted out the required payment from her small purse, wincing internally at how quickly her funds were diminishing. Wade tipped his hat to both women. "I'll leave you to get settled then. Good day, Mrs. Finch, Zara." As he turned to go, Zara felt a strange reluctance to see him leave. He had been her lifeline this morning, a kindness when she needed it most. "Wade," she called after him. When he turned, she found herself momentarily at a loss for words. "Thank you," she finally said, "for everything." He smiled, a warm, genuine expression that reached his eyes. "Until tomorrow, Zara." As she watched him lead his horse down the street toward the livery stable, Zara felt a flutter in her chest that had nothing to do with fear or uncertainty. It was something lighter, more hopeful, a feeling she hadn't expected to experience on this most terrible of days. With a deep breath, she turned and followed Mrs. Finch into the boarding house, ready to face whatever came next. The room was small but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a single window overlooking the back garden. It was a far cry from the spacious bedroom she'd left behind, but it was hers, a space where she could begin to build a new life. Zara unpacked her few belongings, arranging them carefully in the small dresser. A spare dress, undergarments, her mother's silver hairbrush, a worn copy of Pride and Prejudice that had been a gift from her grandmother, and a small photograph of her family taken 3 years earlier, before her brothers had grown so tall and her father's face had hardened with ambition. She ran her fingers over the faces in the photograph, wondering if she would ever see them again. Her mother's gentle smile, her brother's mischievous grins, even her father, stern but not yet cruel, had he truly meant that she was dead to them? Or would he cool his temper and send for her once he realized she wouldn't be manipulated? Zara set the photograph on the dresser, facing away from the bed. She couldn't bear to look at it as she fell asleep, not tonight. After washing her face and hands in the basin, she changed into her nightgown and slipped beneath the covers, exhaustion finally catching up to her. As she drifted off to sleep, her last conscious thought was of Wade Irving's steady presence beside her on the long road to town and the promise of his return tomorrow. Morning came too soon, sunlight streaming through the thin curtains and the sounds of the town already bustling outside her window. Zara dressed carefully in her best day dress, a modest blue calico that brought out the color of her eyes, and pinned her long brown hair into a neat bun. If she was to look for work today, she needed to make a good impression. Mrs. Finch's breakfast was simple but hearty: eggs, bacon, biscuits, and strong coffee. Zara ate at the communal table with the other boarders, a young bank clerk, an elderly widower, and 2 spinster sisters who worked as seamstresses in town. They were politely curious about the new arrival, but didn't pry when Zara kept her explanations vague. "Just arrived from my family's ranch," she said. "Thought it was time I experienced more of the world." After breakfast, she set out to explore Kelton properly. The main street was lined with the usual establishments: a general store, a bank, a hotel fancier than the boarding house, a saloon, a small church, and various shops. People nodded politely as she passed, some with recognition in their eyes. The daughter of Leonard Ellis would be known to most, Even if they hadn't formally met, Zara's first stop was the general store. As Wade had suggested, she inquired whether Mrs. Holloway needed any help, but was disappointed to learn that the position had been filled just the previous week. The schoolhouse yielded similar results. They would keep her in mind if a need arose, but for now they were adequately staffed. By midday, Zara had tried every respectable establishment in town with no success. She sat on a bench outside the post office, trying to quell the rising panic. Her savings wouldn't last more than a week at the boarding house. After that, "You look like you could use some good news," a familiar voice said. Zara looked up to find Wade standing before her, his hat in his hands. The sight of him brought an unexpected smile to her lips. "I could indeed," she admitted. "Though I'm beginning to doubt there's any to be found." Wade sat beside her, leaving a respectful distance between them. "No luck with employment, then?" "None. It seems Kelton has no need for a woman with my limited skills." "What skills do you have?" he asked, not unkindly. Zara considered the question. "I can manage a household, cook, clean, mend. I'm good with figures. I kept the ranch books when my father was too busy. I can ride, though not as well as my brothers. I read voraciously. I play the piano passably." She sighed. "None of which seems particularly valuable here." Wade was quiet for a moment, thinking. "Have you tried the newspaper office? Mr. Porter was complaining just yesterday that his assistant left to get married, moved to Helena with her new husband." Hope flared within her. "Do you think he would consider a woman for the position?" Porter's unconventional but fair. He might. It was the first promising lead she'd had all day. "Where's the newspaper office?" "End of the street, small building with the blue door," Wade said, pointing. "I can walk you there if you like." "I would appreciate that," Zara said, standing and smoothing her skirts. "I confess I'm nervous." "You'll do fine," Wade assured her, rising to join her. "Just be honest about what you can do." Porter values straightforwardness. As they walked together toward the newspaper office, Zara was acutely aware of the glances they received from townsfolk. A young, unmarried woman walking with a cowboy would certainly start tongues wagging, especially given her family's prominence in the area. "People are staring," she murmured. "Let them," Wade replied, unconcerned. "Small towns run on gossip. They'll find something new to talk about soon enough." His easy confidence was reassuring. When they reached the newspaper office, Wade opened the door for her but didn't enter. "I'll wait out here," he said. "This is something you should do on your own." Grateful for his understanding, Zara squared her shoulders and stepped inside. The Kelton Weekly Gazette occupied a single room filled with the pungent smells of ink and paper. A large printing press dominated one side, while desks cluttered with papers occupied the other. A balding man with spectacles perched on his nose was hunched over one of these desks, scribbling furiously. "Excuse me," Zara said. "Are you Mr. Porter?" The man looked up, blinking as if surprised to find someone else in the room. "I am, and you're Leonard Ellis's girl." It wasn't a question. "Zara," she supplied, "I understand you might be in need of an assistant." Porter set down his pen and regarded her with interest. "I might. Though I'm curious why the daughter of one of the wealthiest ranchers in the county is looking for work at a small town newspaper." Zara hesitated, then decided on honesty. "My father and I had a disagreement about my future. I'm making my own way now." Understanding dawned in Porter's eyes. "I see. Well, Miss Ellis, just Zara, please." "Zara, then. Can you read?" "Yes, sir." "Write legibly?" "Yes, sir." "Operate a typewriter?" "I've never had the opportunity to learn, but I'm a quick study." Porter stood and walked around the desk to face her properly. He was shorter than she'd first thought, barely reaching her shoulder, but there was a sharpness in his gaze that suggested a keen intelligence. "The job isn't glamorous," he warned. "Setting type, proofreading, running errands, keeping the books. Sometimes writing up small items, social notices, church announcements, that sort of thing. 6 days a week, Sundays off, pay is modest." "I would be grateful for the opportunity," Zara said sincerely. Porter studied her for a long moment, as if gauging her determination. Finally, he nodded. "You can start tomorrow, 8 o'clock sharp, don't be late." Relief washed over her. "Thank you, Mr. Porter, I won't let you down. See that you don't." He gestured toward the door. That cowboy waiting outside for you, he's a good sort. Irving, isn't it? Works for the Thompson spread. Surprised, Zara nodded. Yes, Wade Irving. He's been kind enough to help me get settled in town, Porter grunted. Thompsons speak highly of him, hard worker, honest. He picked up his pen again, already turning his attention back to his work. See you tomorrow, Zara. Taking this as dismissal, Zara thanked him again and stepped outside where Wade was waiting patiently. Well, he asked, studying her face. I start tomorrow, she said, unable to contain her smile. Mr. Porter hired me on the spot. Wade's face lit up with genuine pleasure at her success. I knew he would. Congratulations. I couldn't have done it without your suggestion, Zara said gratefully. You've been so helpful, Wade. I don't know how to repay you. No repayment necessary, he assured her, but I would be honored if you join me for dinner at the hotel restaurant. To celebrate your new position. The invitation caught her off guard. Dining alone with a man who wasn't a family member or approved suitor went against everything she'd been raised to believe was proper. But then again, she was making her own rules now. I would like that, she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. Excellent. Shall I call for you at the boarding house at 6? That would be perfect. They parted ways then, Wade returning to his work at the Thompson Ranch and Zara heading back to the boarding house. As she walked, her steps were lighter than they had been that morning. She had a job, a place to stay, and perhaps a new friend in Wade Irving. For the first time since her father's ultimatum, Zara felt something like hope for her future. When Wade arrived at the boarding house that evening, precisely at 6 o'clock, Zara was waiting in the small parlor. She had changed into her only other dress, a simple green gown with modest lace trim at the collar and cuffs. Her hair was arranged in a more elaborate style than that morning, with soft tendrils framing her face. Wade stood in the doorway, hat in hand, looking every inch the gentleman despite his working clothes. He had clearly made an effort. His shirt was fresh, his hair neatly combed, his boots polished. You look lovely, he said, with such sincerity that Zara felt a blush rise to her cheeks. Thank you, you're very handsome yourself. Mrs. Finch appeared from the kitchen, her expression a mixture of curiosity and concern. Remember, Miss Ellis, curfew is at 9. Yes, Mrs. Finch. We won't be late. The hotel restaurant was the finest establishment in Kelton, though it would have been considered modest in a larger city. Tablecloths covered the small tables, and oil lamps cast a warm glow over the diners. A piano player in the corner provided quiet background music. As Wade led her to a table by the window, Zara was keenly aware of the stares they attracted. She recognized several faces, business associates of her father, wives of local ranchers, the banker and his family. All watching with varying degrees of surprise and speculation as Leonard Ellis's daughter dined with a Thompson Ranch hand. Ignore them, Wade said quietly as he held her chair. Their opinions don't matter. Easy to say, Zara murmured, though she appreciated his steadfastness. The waiter brought menus, and Wade insisted she order whatever she wanted. This is a celebration, after all. Over roast beef, potatoes, and fresh bread, they talked more freely than they had before. Wade told her about growing up in Kelton, the son of the livery stable owner, with dreams of one day having his own ranch. My brother inherited the livery, he explained. I've been saving every penny from my work with the Thompsons. Another year or two and I might have enough for a small spread of my own. That's admirable, Zara said, genuinely impressed by his determination and work ethic. To build something from nothing. What about you? Wade asked. Before yesterday, what were your dreams? The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked about her dreams before. Her future had always been predetermined marriage to a man of her father's choosing, children, the life of a rancher's wife. I suppose I never allowed myself to dream much, she admitted. Though I always loved to read, sometimes I imagined writing stories of my own. Wade's eyes lit with interest. And now you'll be working at a newspaper, perhaps not so far from that dream after all. Perhaps not, she agreed, surprised by the connection she hadn't made herself. As they ate and talked, Zara found herself increasingly drawn to Wade's quiet strength and genuine kindness. There was no pretense about him, no hidden agenda. He spoke his mind directly but never cruelly, and he truly listened when she spoke. After dinner, they walked slowly back toward the boarding house, the evening air cool against Zara's skin. The stars were emerging in the vast Montana sky, countless pinpricks of light in the gathering darkness. "I've been thinking about your situation," Wade said as they neared Mrs. Finch's place. "And I want you to know that if you ever need anything at all, you can come to me." Zara was touched by the offer. "That's very kind, not kindness," he corrected gently. "Friendship. I hope we are friends, Zara." "We are," she assured him, surprised by how true it felt after such a short acquaintance. They reached the boarding house steps and Wade stopped, not presuming to accompany her to the door. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," Zara said, suddenly shy. "The pleasure was mine." He hesitated, then asked, "Would it be too forward to call on you again?" "Perhaps Sunday after church." The proper response would be to say yes, it would indeed be too forward. They had no chaperone, no formal introduction, no permission from her family. But Zara was tired of propriety and the rigid rules that had nearly trapped her in a loveless marriage. "I would like that very much," she said instead. Wade's smile was worth any social censure she might face. "Then I'll see you Sunday, and perhaps sooner in town. Good night, Wade." "Good night, Zara. Sleep well." As she watched him walk away, Zara felt a curious lightness in her chest. For all the upheaval and heartache of the past 2 days, she couldn't deny that meeting Wade Irving had been an unexpected blessing. The next weeks fell into a pattern that brought Zara both comfort and a growing sense of independence. Each morning, she rose early and walked to the newspaper office, where Mr. Porter grudgingly admitted she was a quick learner and a diligent worker. She mastered the typewriter within days, could set type nearly as fast as Porter himself, and had a natural eye for proofreading. By the end of her second week, he had entrusted her with writing the social column, a task she approached with unexpected enthusiasm, finding she had a talent for capturing the small moments that made up community life in Kelton. Her days were busy and fulfilling, her evenings quiet but peaceful in her small room at the boarding house. And then there were the bright spots. Wade calling on her each Sunday after church, occasional dinners at the hotel restaurant, and chance meetings in town that somehow never felt like chance at all. 3 weeks after her arrival in Kelton, Zara was working late at the newspaper office, finishing the layout for the next day's edition when the bell over the door jingled. She looked up, expecting Mr. Porter returning from his dinner, but instead found herself face to face with her eldest brother, Thomas. "Tom," she gasped, rising so quickly she knocked over her chair. He stood awkwardly in the doorway, hat in hand, looking so much like their father that Zara's heart clenched. At 25, Thomas was already being groomed to take over the ranch someday. "Zara," he said, his voice gruff with emotion, "you look well." "I am well," she replied, uncertain whether to embrace him or keep her distance. "What brings you to town?" Thomas stepped further into the office, glancing around at the organized chaos of the newspaper. "I needed to see for myself, make sure you were all right. As you can see, I'm fine." "I have work, a place to stay. Father doesn't know I'm here," Thomas blurted. He's still angry. Zara's hoped that small, persistent spark that her family might reconcile with her dimmed slightly. "And Mother," she cries when she thinks no one is watching. Thomas shifted uncomfortably. "She wanted me to give you this." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small package wrapped in brown paper. Zara took it with trembling hands, unwrapping it to find a small drawstring purse. Inside were several gold coins enough to support her for months if needed. "I can't accept this," Zara said, though the sight of the money made her realize how precarious her financial situation remained, despite her job. "Mother insists," Thomas said firmly. "She said it was her personal savings, not Father's money. Please, Zara, it would ease her mind." Reluctantly, Zara tucked the purse into her skirt pocket. "Thank her for me. You could thank her yourself," Thomas suggested, hope evident in his tone. "Father will come around eventually. If you apologized. Zara's voice hardened. "For refusing to marry a man old enough to be my father. A man who made my skin crawl with a single touch. No, Thomas, I won't apologize for that. Her brother sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made Zara's heart ache with homesickness despite everything. I understand more than you might think, he said quietly. Jeremiah Blackstone is not a man I would have chosen for my sister, but father is set on the alliance. The Blackstone herds would double our grazing land. So my happiness is worth less than grazing land, Zara said bitterly. That's not fair, isn't it? She shook her head, unwilling to argue further. It doesn't matter now, I've made a life for myself here, a good life. Thomas studied her face, seeming to see beyond her brave words to the hurt beneath. I've heard talk, he said carefully. About you and that Irving fellow, Zara stiffened. Wade has been a friend when I needed one most. Is that all? Because rumor has it you're seen together quite often, dining at the hotel, walking after church. And if it's more than friendship, Zara challenged, what then? Will you report back to father that I've disgraced the family name by associating with a ranch hand? Thomas held up his hands in a gesture of peace. I'm not here to spy or cause trouble, Zara. I just want to be sure you're being careful. Irving may be a decent sort, but he has nothing to offer you. No property, no prospects. He has kindness, integrity, and ambition, Zara countered. And he sees me as a person, not a bargaining chip in some business arrangement. Her brother had no ready answer for that. After a moment of tense silence, he sighed again. I should go. I told Mother I'd be back by nightfall. Zara nodded, suddenly exhausted by the encounter. Thank you for coming, Tom, and for the gift from Mother. Thomas hesitated, then stepped forward and embraced her awkwardly. Take care of yourself, little sister. You too, she whispered, fighting back tears. After he left, Zara sank back into her chair, the newspaper layout forgotten. The visit had reopened wounds she thought were beginning to heal, reminding her sharply of all she had lost. The Ellis Ranch had been her home for 20 years, her entire life. Despite her father's harshness, there had been good times too. Sunday dinners, Christmas celebrations, riding across the property with her brothers at dawn. Would she ever truly be part of a family again? The bell over the door jingled once more. This time it was Mr. Porter returning from his dinner with ink-stained fingers and his usual gruff demeanor. Still here, Ellis. Dedication, I like it. He paused, noticing her distress. Something wrong? Zara quickly wiped her eyes. No, sir. Just finishing the layout. Porter wasn't fooled, but he didn't press. Well, don't stay too late. Young ladies need their rest. His gruff concern brought a small smile to Zara's lips. Yes, sir, I'm nearly done. She finished her work methodically, pushing thoughts of her family to the back of her mind. When the layout was complete to Porter's exacting standards, she gathered her shawl and headed for the door. Good night, Mr. Porter. Night, Ellis. Good work today. The simple praise warmed her as she stepped into the evening air. The main street of Kelton was quiet at this hour, most businesses closed, though light and piano music spilled from the saloon further down the road. Zara pulled her shawl tighter around her shoulders and began the walk back to the boarding house. She was halfway there when she heard quick footsteps behind her and turned, alarmed only to find Wade approaching, concern evident on his face. Zara, he said, slightly out of breath. I was worried when I saw you walking alone. It's getting dark. Wade, she sighed, relief and something warmer flooding through her at the sight of him. You startled me. I'm sorry. I was at the livery with my brother when I saw you leave the newspaper office. He fell into step beside her. May I walk you home? Of course, thank you. They walked in companionable silence for a moment before Wade spoke again. I saw your brother in town today. Thomas, isn't it? Zara tensed. Yes, he came to check on me. That's good, isn't it, that your family is concerned? I suppose, she said noncommittally, not wanting to revisit the painful conversation. Wade, perceptive as always, didn't push. Instead, he changed the subject. How was your day at the newspaper? Grateful for his sensitivity, Zara told him about the latest edition, the story she was working on about the new schoolteacher, the letter to the editor from an irate farmer whose chickens had been stolen. Porter says I have a knack for the social column, she said with a touch of pride. He's letting me write more each week. That's wonderful, Wade said, his genuine pleasure in her success warming her heart. I always thought you'd make a fine writer. They reached the boarding house too quickly for Zara's liking. She found herself reluctant to end their conversation, brief as it had been. "Thank you for walking me home," she said, lingering on the bottom step. "My pleasure." Wade hesitated, then spoke earnestly. "Zara, I hope your brother's visit wasn't too difficult, if you ever want to talk about it." His concern undid her carefully maintained composure. To her horror, tears sprang to her eyes. "He brought money from my mother and hopes that I'll apologize and return home." Wade's expression darkened. "Return home to marry Blackstone?" "Yes," she wiped angrily at her tears. As if that were ever a possibility. Without hesitation, Wade reached out and took her hand in his, a bold gesture that would have scandalized Mrs. Finch had she been watching from the window. "You're stronger than they know," he said softly, "and braver too." The simple words, spoken with such conviction, soothed Zara's wounded spirit. "Thank you for that," she whispered. They stood for a long moment, hands clasped, eyes locked. Something shifted between them, a recognition of feelings that went beyond friendship. Wade's gaze dropped briefly to her lips, and Zara found herself leaning slightly toward him, drawn by an invisible force. The moment was broken by the boarding house door opening, Mrs. Finch's voice calling sharply, "Miss Ellis. Is that you out there?" Wade released her hand quickly, stepping back. "Good night, Zara," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "Good night, Wade," she replied, the words feeling inadequate for the feelings swirling within her. As she climbed the stairs to her room, Zara's mind was a jumble of conflicting emotions: the pain of her brother's visit, the comfort of Wade's presence, and the startling realization that what she felt for the cowboy was rapidly becoming something much deeper than friendship. 2 months passed, the Montana summer giving way to early autumn. Zara's life in Kelton settled into a rhythm that brought her growing satisfaction. Her work at the newspaper expanded beyond typesetting and the social column. Mr. Porter now trusted her to write more substantial pieces about town developments and even to interview local personalities. Her relationship with Wade also deepened. After that night outside the boarding house, something had changed between them. Their Sunday walks became longer, their conversations more personal. Twice, he had taken her riding outside of town, showing her his favorite spots in the rolling countryside: a hidden waterfall, a ridge that offered views all the way to the distant mountains. On the first Sunday in September, they rode to a meadow filled with late wildflowers. Wade spread a blanket beneath a cottonwood tree, and they shared a picnic lunch. He had packed cold chicken, biscuits, apples, and a small jar of honey. "This is perfect," Zara sighed contentedly, leaning back against the tree trunk and gazing at the clear blue sky above. "I can't remember when I've been so relaxed." Wade sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "You've been working too hard. Porter works you like a mule," she laughed. "I don't mind. I enjoy the work, truly." "You're good at it," Wade acknowledged. "I saw your piece about the railroad coming to Kelton. Well written, informative." "Thank you," Zara said, pleased by his praise. "Though I'm not sure everyone appreciated it, particularly the part about the potential for new businesses and competition." "Can't please everyone," Wade shrugged. "That's journalism." They fell into comfortable silence, enjoying the gentle rustle of leaves overhead and the occasional bird call. Zara found herself studying Wade's profile: the strong line of his jaw, the way his dark hair curled at his collar, the tiny laugh lines at the corners of his eyes. "You're staring," he said without looking at her, a smile playing at his lips. Caught, Zara blushed. "I was just thinking how grateful I am that you were on that road the day I left home. I don't know what would have become of me if you hadn't helped me." Wade turned to face her, his expression serious. "You would have been fine. You're stronger than you know, Zara Ellis." "Perhaps," she conceded, "but I'm glad I didn't have to find out alone." His gaze held hers, intense and searching. "Zara," he began, his voice low. "These past months, getting to know you, they've been the best of my life." Her heart quickened at his words and the emotion behind them. "Mine too," she admitted softly. Wade reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her cheek. "I find myself thinking about you all the time. When we're apart, I count the hours until I can see you again." Zara leaned slightly into his touch, emboldened by his confession. I feel the same way. Do you? Hope flared in his eyes. Because I need to be clear about my intentions, Zara. I'm not a wealthy man. I can't offer you the life you had at the Ellis Ranch, but everything I have, everything I am, is yours if you want it. The sincerity in his voice brought tears to Zara's eyes. Wade Irving, she whispered, I don't want my old life back. I want a new one with you. It was all the invitation he needed. Wade leaned forward, closing the distance between them, and pressed his lips to hers in a kiss that was tentative at first, then increasingly confident as Zara responded eagerly. His arms encircled her, drawing her closer, and she melted against him, feeling truly safe for the first time in months. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Wade rested his forehead against hers. I love you, Zara Ellis, he murmured. I think I started falling for you that very first day on the road to Kelton. I love you too, she replied, the words flowing naturally, as if she had been waiting her whole life to say them to this man. Wade kissed her again, more briefly this time, then pulled back to look into her eyes. There's something else I need to tell you, something important, Zara's heart faltered. What is it? I've been keeping a secret, he admitted. Not a bad one, I hope, but something I should have told you sooner. Concern furrowed her brow. You can tell me anything, Wade. He took a deep breath. I've bought land, a small ranch about 10 miles outside of town, the old Anderson place. What? Zara's eyes widened in surprise. When? How? 3 weeks ago. I've been saving for years, you know that. And I got a good price. Anderson's widow was eager to sell after he passed. It's not much, 100 acres, a small cabin that needs work, a barn in decent condition, but it's mine. Pride colored his voice. Our nearest neighbor would be the Thompson spread, about 5 miles east. Zara was stunned. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I wanted everything to be settled first, and he hesitated, suddenly uncertain. I wanted to be able to offer you something real, something tangible when I asked you to share my life. Understanding dawned. Wade Irving, she said slowly, are you proposing to me? He smiled, a touch nervously. I'm trying to, not very well it seems. Joy bubbled up inside her. Ask me properly then. Wade shifted to one knee before her, taking her hand in both of his. Zara Ellis, I love you more than I ever thought possible. Would you do me the great honor of becoming my wife, of building a life with me on our own small piece of Montana? Tears of happiness spilled down Zara's cheeks as she nodded. Yes, she whispered. Yes, Wade, nothing would make me happier. He pulled her to her feet and into his arms, spinning her in a circle until they were both laughing with pure joy. When he set her down, he kissed her again, sealing their promise to one another. When? Zara asked when they finally broke apart. When can we marry? As soon as you like, Wade said. The cabin needs work before it's proper for a bride, but I've already started repairs. Another month, perhaps, a month, she repeated, hardly able to believe that in such a short time she would be Wade Irving's wife. Perfect. They spent the rest of the afternoon making plans for the wedding, for the ranch, for their future together. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, they reluctantly packed up their picnic and rode back toward town, Zara's heart lighter than it had been since the day her father cast her out. The news of their engagement spread quickly through Kelton. Mr. Porter gruffly congratulated Zara, though he complained about having to find a new assistant editor. Mrs. Finch clucked and fussed, torn between delight at her romance blossoming under her roof and concern about Zara marrying beneath her station. The spinster sisters at the boarding house offered to help sew Zara's wedding dress. The general store owner, Mr. Holloway, promised a special discount on household goods for the new couple. Even the banker, Mr. Stevens, pulled Wade aside one day to discuss a possible small loan for livestock if needed. The outpouring of support from the town touched Zara deeply. These people, many of whom had been strangers 3 months ago, now felt like family. There was, of course, the matter of her actual family. Despite her happiness, Zara couldn't help but wish her mother could attend her wedding, that her brothers could shake Wade's hand and welcome him to the family. Should we invite them? Wade asked one evening as they sat on the boarding house porch discussing wedding plans. Your family. Zara sighed. I don't know, father would never come, not after what he said, and mother, I don't know if she would defy him even for this. Your brothers might, Wade suggested gently. Thomas seemed concerned about you, she considered this. Perhaps I could write to Thomas at least. Let him know. Whatever you decide, I'll support you, Wade assured her, squeezing her hand. The letter to Thomas was difficult to write. Zara discarded several drafts before settling on a simple, direct approach. Dear Thomas, I hope this letter finds you and the family well. I write with news that I will be married on October 15th to Wade Irving. The ceremony will be held at the Kelton church at 2 o'clock. Wade is a good man, Thomas. He has purchased a small ranch outside of town, and we will build our life there together. I am happier than I have ever been. I understand if father forbids the family from attending. But know that you and James and mother would be welcome if you could come. Your loving sister, Zara. She posted the letter with little hope of a positive response, but felt better for having reached out. The wedding preparations continued. A simple dress of cream-colored silk was nearly finished. The church was reserved. Reverend Miller had agreed to perform the ceremony, and the hotel would host a modest reception afterward. 2 weeks before the wedding, Zara accompanied Wade to see the ranch for the first time. They rode out early on a Sunday morning, the air crisp with autumn coolness, the landscape painted in golds and reds as the trees changed color. It's just over this rise, Wade said as they crested a small hill. Our home. The word "our" sent a thrill through Zara. Then the ranch came into view and she caught her breath. It was modest compared to the Ellis spread, but beautiful in its own right. A clearing surrounded by pine trees held a small log cabin, recently repaired from the looks of the fresh-cut wood. A barn stood nearby, painted a cheerful red with a corral attached. A creek ran behind the property, glinting in the morning sun. Wade, Zara breathed. It's perfect. His face lit up with pride and relief. You really think so? It needs more work, I know. The inside of the cabin, show me everything, she interrupted, eager to see the place that would soon be her home. They dismounted, and Wade led her first to the cabin. It was indeed rough inside. 2 rooms, sparsely furnished with a bed, table, chairs, and cook stove, but Zara could see the potential. The windows were large, letting in plenty of light, and Wade had built shelves along one wall for your books when you have them. The barn was in better condition, with stalls for 4 horses and additional space that could be converted for other livestock. A chicken coop stood behind it, empty for now but ready for inhabitants. I thought we could start with chickens, Wade explained as they walked the property. Then maybe a milk cow. Eventually a small herd of cattle if we can manage it. Zara listened to his plans, adding her own ideas, picturing their life unfolding in this peaceful place. By the time they headed back to town in the late afternoon, she was even more certain that she had made the right choice, not just in accepting Wade's proposal, but in refusing to bend to her father's will all those months ago. If she had married Jeremiah Blackstone, she would never have known this kind of happiness, this sense of building something meaningful with someone she truly loved. 3 days before the wedding, Zara was at the newspaper office, finishing her last articles before taking leave of her position when the door opened. She looked up, expecting Mr. Porter returning from lunch, but instead found herself facing her mother. "Mother," she gasped, rising from her desk in shock. Margaret Ellis stood hesitantly in the doorway, looking smaller and older than Zara remembered. Her once vibrant auburn hair, so like Zara's own, was now streaked with gray, and her face bore new lines of worry. "Zara," she whispered, her voice breaking on the name. "My girl." They moved toward each other simultaneously, meeting in the middle of the office in a fierce embrace. Zara breathed in her mother's familiar rose water scent, tears flowing freely down her cheeks. "I can't believe you're here," she said when they finally broke apart. Margaret wiped at her own tears. "I received your letter to Thomas, or rather, I intercepted it before your father could see it." She took Zara's hands in hers, examining her daughter's face closely. "You look well, happy." "I am happy, Mother, very happy." Margaret nodded, a bittersweet smile touching her lips. "Tell me about him, this man you're going to marry." They sat together at Zara's desk while she told her mother everything: how Wade had found her that first day, how he had helped her find work and a place to stay, how their friendship had blossomed into love. She described the ranch, their plans for the future, the life they hoped to build together. "He sounds wonderful," Margaret said when Zara finished, "and you love him very much, that's clear." "I do," Zara confirmed. "More than I can say," her mother sighed, squeezing Zara's hands. "Then I am happy for you, my dear, truly." "Will you?" Zara hesitated, afraid to hope. "Will you stay for the wedding?" Pain flashed across Margaret's face. "I cannot. Your father believes I'm visiting my sister in Billings if he knew I had come to see you." She shook her head, "But I brought something." From her bag she withdrew a small velvet box. "My mother's pearls. I always intended them for you on your wedding day." Zara opened the box with trembling fingers to find a delicate strand of pearls nestled inside. "They're beautiful," she whispered. "There's more," Margaret said, reaching into her bag again. This time she pulled out a larger package wrapped in brown paper. "From your brothers." Inside were two gifts: a fine leather-bound journal from Thomas, with a note expressing his regret that he couldn't attend but promising to visit soon, and from James, her younger brother, a handcrafted wooden box with her initials, soon to be outdated, carved into the lid. "They miss you," Margaret said softly. "We all do. And Father?" Zara couldn't help but ask, though she knew the answer. Margaret's expression hardened slightly. "Your father is a proud, stubborn man, but even he has noticed the emptiness you left behind." She hesitated, then added, "Jeremiah Blackstone married a widow from Helena last month. Your father took it as a personal insult." Zara felt a weight lift from her shoulders at this news. At least now her father couldn't cling to the hope that she might return and fulfill his plans for that alliance. "I should go," Margaret said reluctantly, glancing at the clock on the wall. "I have a long ride back, and I need to be home before your father returns from the south pasture." They embraced again, holding each other tightly. "I love you, Mother," Zara whispered. "And I love you, my brave girl," Margaret replied. "Be happy, Zara. That's all I've ever wanted for you." After her mother left, Zara sat for a long time, running her fingers over the pearl necklace and the gifts from her brothers. The visit had been brief but healing, a bridge between her old life and the new one she was building. When Wade came to the newspaper office later that afternoon to walk her home, she told him about her mother's unexpected appearance. "I'm glad she came," Wade said, putting an arm around Zara's shoulders as they walked, "that she got to hear about us from you directly." "So am I," Zara agreed. "And she approved of you, by the way, I could tell," Wade smiled. "High praise indeed, and your brother's gifts, that's a good sign too, isn't it, that they're reaching out?" "Yes," Zara said thoughtfully, "I think it is. A beginning, perhaps." The day of the wedding dawned clear and cool, the October sky a brilliant blue. Zara dressed in her simple cream gown, the spinster sisters fussing around her, arranging her hair and adjusting the fall of the fabric. Her mother's pearls graced her neck, gleaming softly against her skin. Mrs. Finch dabbed at her eyes as Zara descended the boarding house stairs. "You look beautiful, my dear. Absolutely beautiful." The church was filled with well-wishers. It seemed the entire town of Kelton had turned out for the occasion. Mr. Porter sat in the front row, unusually dapper in a clean suit, alongside Mrs. Holloway, who had taken a motherly interest in Zara since her arrival in town. As the small orchestra, 3 musicians from the saloon, volunteering their services for the day, began to play, Zara took a deep breath and stepped into the church doorway alone. There was no father to give her away, no family to stand beside her. But as she looked down the aisle and saw Wade waiting for her, handsome in a new suit, his face alight with love, she felt no lack. This was her choice, her path, her future, walking toward the man she loved of her own free will. The ceremony was brief but meaningful. They exchanged simple vows and rings. Wade had saved for months to purchase a delicate gold band for Zara, while she had secretly ordered a sturdy one for him from the catalog at the general store. "I now pronounce you man and wife," Reverend Miller declared with a warm smile. "You may kiss your bride." Wade's kiss was tender and reverent, a promise of the life they would build together. As they turned to face their friends and neighbors, now as husband and wife, Zara's heart swelled with joy and gratitude. The reception at the hotel was a merry affair, with food, music, and dancing lasting well into the evening. Wade kept Zara close, his hand often finding hers, his eyes seeking her face as if he couldn't quite believe his good fortune. As the celebration began to wind down, Wade leaned close to whisper in her ear, "Ready to go home, Mrs. Irving?" The new name sent a thrill through Zara. "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "Take me home." They slipped away amid cheers and well wishes, mounting the horses Wade had readied earlier. The ride to their ranch was magical starlight illuminating the path, the cool night air filled with the scent of pine, and the promise of their future together stretching out before them. When they arrived, Wade insisted on carrying Zara across the threshold of their cabin, a traditional gesture that made her laugh with delight. Inside, he had prepared a surprise new curtains at the windows, a colorful quilt on the bed, and a small bookshelf already containing several volumes. "When did you do all this?" Zara asked, touched by his thoughtfulness. "I had help," Wade admitted with a smile. "Mrs. Holloway and her daughter came out yesterday. They said every new bride needs a proper homecoming." Zara moved around the cabin, running her fingers over her new possessions, their new possessions. It was humble compared to her childhood home, but it was theirs, built with love and hard work. "Do you like it?" Wade asked, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "It's not much, I know," but Zara silenced him with a kiss. "It's perfect," she assured him. "Everything I could want." Later, as they lay together in their new bed, the bond between them now complete in every way, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the desperate young woman walking alone at dawn, cast out by her family, to this moment of perfect contentment in her husband's arms. "What are you thinking about?" Wade murmured, stroking her hair. "About how sometimes the worst day of your life can lead to the best," she replied, snuggling closer to him. "If my father hadn't cast me out, I might never have found you." "I like to think we would have found each other somehow," Wade said, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "But I'm grateful it happened the way it did, even the painful parts." "As am I," Zara agreed, listening to the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear. "As am I." The first year of marriage brought both joys and challenges for the Irvings. Winter settled over their small ranch with a vengeance, testing the soundness of Wade's repairs to the cabin and their preparations for the cold months. They were snowed in for nearly a week in January, the drifts piling high against the doors and windows, but they found contentment in each other's company, reading aloud by lamplight, playing cards, telling stories of their childhoods, and making love beneath the warm quilts. Spring's arrival was all the sweeter for the harsh winter that preceded it. Wade and Zara worked side by side to plant a vegetable garden, repair fences damaged by the snow, and care for their small but growing collection of livestock: 6 chickens, a milk cow named Buttercup, and 2 new horses to join the pair they already owned. In May, Thomas made good on his promise to visit. He arrived unannounced one Sunday afternoon, riding up to their cabin with uncertainty written across his face. "Thomas," Zara cried, running to embrace her brother, "I can't believe you're really here." He returned her hug awkwardly, then extended his hand to Wade, who had come to stand beside his wife. "Irving," he said formally. "Ellis," Wade replied, equally formal, before breaking into a genuine smile. "Welcome to our home." Over coffee and Zara's freshly baked bread, Thomas gradually relaxed. He told them about changes at the Ellis Ranch, a new breeding program for their cattle, James's engagement to the daughter of a neighboring rancher, their mother's improved spirits. "And father?" Zara asked cautiously. Thomas hesitated. "He's the same, mostly, still stubborn, still proud." He glanced at Wade, then back to Zara. "But he asks about you sometimes, in roundabout ways, never directly. Mother tells him what she knows from my reports." Hope fluttered in Zara's chest. "Do you think he might ever—" "I don't know," Thomas interrupted gently. "I hope so, but I can't promise." She nodded, accepting the uncertainty. "I'm glad you came, Tom. It means everything." Before he left, Thomas pulled a small purse from his saddlebag. "From Mother again," he explained. "And a bit from James and me too, a belated wedding gift." This time, Zara accepted the money without protest. She and Wade could use it to buy more cattle, expanding their small herd more quickly than they had planned. "Tell Mother I love her," she said as Thomas mounted his horse. "And James too." "I will," he promised. "And Zara, you look happy, truly happy." She smiled up at Wade, who stood with his arm around her waist. "I am." Thomas nodded, satisfied, then touched his hat brim in farewell and rode away. That summer brought another change to their lives. Zara began to suspect in June, but waited until she was certain before telling Wade. On a warm July evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, she took his hand and placed it on her still flat stomach. "Wade," she said softly, "we're going to have a baby." His face transformed with wonder and joy. "A baby, are you sure?" "Yes," she laughed. "Due in January, I think." Wade pulled her onto his lap, holding her as if she were made of the most precious glass. "A baby," he repeated, awe in his voice. "Our child." They spent hours that night talking about the future, how they would rearrange the cabin to make room for a nursery, whether the baby would have Zara's auburn hair or Wade's dark curls, what name they might choose. "If it's a girl," Wade said thoughtfully, "I like the name Margaret after your mother." The suggestion brought tears to Zara's eyes. "And if it's a boy," Wade considered. "William, perhaps, after my father." "Margaret or William," Zara murmured, testing the names. "Perfect." As autumn painted the landscape in gold and crimson once more, Zara's body changed to accommodate the growing life within her. Her slender form rounded, her cheeks took on a rosy glow, and a new softness entered her eyes when she spoke of the future. Wade was attentive to her every need, insisting she rest when she tried to do too much, riding into town for special treats when she had cravings, and talking softly to her belly each night before they fell asleep. Word of the coming baby reached the Ellis ranch through Thomas's regular visits. In November, a package arrived by post, a handmade quilt in soft yellows and greens, neutral colors suitable for a boy or girl, with a note in Margaret Ellis's handwriting. "For my grandchild, with all my love." The gesture moved both Zara and Wade deeply. That evening, as they added the quilt to the small collection of baby items they were gathering, Wade said thoughtfully, "Family is a strange thing, isn't it? How it can bend and change but never quite break." "Yes," Zara agreed, running her fingers over her mother's careful stitches. "And how it can grow in unexpected ways." December brought heavy snows again, and Wade worried about Zara's condition if they were isolated when her time came. At his insistence, they moved temporarily into town, renting rooms above the general store where help would be close at hand if needed. The baby, apparently impatient to greet the world, arrived 2 weeks early, on a cold, clear night in January. After hours of labor, with the midwife's calm guidance and Wade's anxious support, Zara gave birth to a healthy girl with a dusting of dark hair and her mother's green eyes. "Margaret," Wade whispered, cradling his daughter with tears streaming unashamedly down his face. "Our little Maggie." Zara, exhausted but radiant, watched her husband and child with overwhelming love. "She's perfect," she murmured. "Absolutely perfect." News of Margaret Irving's birth spread quickly through Kelton. Visitors came bearing gifts and good wishes. Mr. Porter with a silver cup, engraved with the baby's name and birth date, Mrs. Holloway with practical baby clothes, the spinster sisters from the boarding house with tiny knitted booties and caps. 3 days after the birth, as Zara was nursing Maggie in the late afternoon, there was a knock at the door of their rooms. Wade answered to find Thomas and James Ellis standing in the hallway, hats in hands, expressions hopeful. "We've come to see our niece," Thomas explained, "if that's all right." Wade hesitated only briefly before stepping aside to let them enter. "Of course, Zara will be delighted." The reunion between Zara and her brothers was emotional. James, whom she hadn't seen since leaving home, had grown taller and more confident in the intervening time. Both men approached the baby with appropriate awe, congratulating the new parents with genuine warmth. "Mother sent these," James said, placing a package on the bedside table. Inside were a silver hairbrush and comb that had belonged to Zara as a child, now polished to gleaming for her daughter. "And this," Thomas added, handing over a sealed envelope. Zara opened it to find a bank draft for a considerable sum and a brief note. "For my granddaughter's future. Use it wisely, Leonard Ellis." She stared at the note in disbelief. Her father's handwriting, her father's signature, acknowledgement of his granddaughter. It was more than she had dared to hope for. "He wanted to come himself," Thomas said quietly. "But he couldn't bring himself to face me," Zara finished for him, understanding in her voice rather than bitterness. "It's all right, Tom. This is a beginning." The brothers stayed for dinner, getting to know Wade better and marveling at little Maggie's tiny perfection. When they left, the promise of more frequent visits hung in the air, a bridge continuing to form between Zara's past and present. Spring brought the family back to their ranch, which had been tended in their absence by Wade's brother from the livery. The cabin seemed smaller with the addition of Maggie's cradle and the various paraphernalia that accompanied a baby, but it was filled with more love than ever. As the weather warmed, they fell into a new routine. Wade worked the land and tended their growing herd of cattle, now numbering 15 head, thanks in part to Leonard Ellis's unexpected gift. Zara managed the household and cared for Maggie, but also found time to write occasional pieces for the Kelton Weekly Gazette, which Mr. Porter was happy to publish. In June, as Maggie approached her 6th month, a rider approached their property late one afternoon. Wade was repairing the corral fence, and Zara was hanging laundry on the line, Maggie sleeping peacefully in a basket nearby. They both stopped their work as they recognized the rider, a tall, broad-shouldered man with iron-gray hair and a stern countenance that had once ruled Zara's world. "Leonard Ellis." Wade immediately moved to Zara's side, his stance protective though not hostile. They watched in silence as Leonard dismounted, tethered his horse, and walked slowly toward them. He stopped several paces away, his eyes moving from Wade to Zara, then to the basket where Maggie slept. "Father," Zara said, breaking the tense silence. Leonard cleared his throat. "Zara." His gaze shifted to Wade. "Irving." Wade nodded in acknowledgement but said nothing, allowing Zara to lead this unexpected encounter. "Would you like to come in?" Zara offered, gesturing toward the cabin. "I could make coffee." Leonard hesitated, then gave a curt nod. "Thank you." Inside, the awkwardness continued as Leonard sat stiffly at their small table while Zara prepared coffee. Wade brought Maggie in from outside, the baby now awake and gurgling happily in her father's arms. "Would you like to hold your granddaughter?" Zara asked when she had served the coffee. Something flickered in Leonard's eyes, vulnerability, perhaps, or regret. After a moment, he extended his arms, and Wade carefully transferred Maggie to her grandfather's hold. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Leonard's stern features softened as he looked down at the infant, who regarded him with curious green eyes. "She looks like you did at this age," he said gruffly to Zara. "Same eyes." "Mother says she has the Ellis chin," Zara replied, referring to the correspondence she now maintained with Margaret. "Strong-willed, she predicts." A ghost of a smile touched Leonard's lips. "Heaven help you both if that's true." The ice was broken, if not fully thawed. Over the next hour, they talked cautiously about the ranch, the cattle, Kelton's growth, the railroad that would soon connect them more directly to Helena and beyond. They avoided the painful past, focusing instead on the present and, tentatively, the future. When it was time for Leonard to leave, he handed Maggie back to Zara with noticeable reluctance. "She's a fine child," he said. "You've done well." The words, simple as they were, held approval that Zara had never expected to hear again from her father. Her throat tight with emotion, she could only nod her thanks. At the door, Leonard turned to Wade. "You take good care of them, Irving." "Yes, sir," Wade replied evenly. "Every day of my life." Leonard nodded, satisfied with the answer. To Zara, he said, "Your mother would like you to visit." "All of you when you can." "We will," Zara promised. Soon, after her father rode away, Zara stood for a long time in the doorway, Maggie cradled against her chest, Wade's arm around her shoulders. "Are you all right?" Wade asked gently. Zara considered the question, sorting through the complex emotions the visit had stirred. "Yes," she finally said. "I am. He didn't apologize, he probably never will, but he came. That's more than I thought possible a year ago." Wade kissed the top of her head. You're extraordinary, you know that. Most people wouldn't find it in themselves to forgive what he did. I haven't fully forgiven, Zara admitted, but I don't want to hold on to anger anymore, not when our life is so full of joy. They stood together as the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, their small cabin and the land around it transformed by the golden light. We did it, didn't we? Zara said softly. Built something beautiful from nothing. Wade tightened his arm around her. We're still building, he reminded her. Every day. Yes, she agreed, leaning into his strength, their daughter warm between them. Every day. As twilight deepened into night, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The painful dawn when she had been cast out, the long road to Kelton, the cowboy who had ridden beside her and never looked back. The struggles and the triumphs, the sorrows and the joys, all woven together to create the tapestry of their shared life. It wasn't the future she had been raised to expect, but it was infinitely richer, infinitely more meaningful than anything she could have imagined that day she walked away from her family's ranch. This was her home now, this cabin, this land, this man, this child. This life they had chosen together, built together, would cherish together for all the days to come. And as she followed Wade and Maggie into the warmth of their home, closing the door on the gathering darkness outside, Zara Ellis Irving knew with absolute certainty that she wouldn't change a single step of the path that had led her here.